Does it feel like our world, especially here in Small Lake City, safe and happy Utah, is becoming a little bit strange and hard to recognize? Well, in today's episode of the Utah Stories podcast, I delve into the culture war. And believe me, it is hard to wrap your head around what is going on because there are not clear boundaries, there's not clear sides, the messaging is not clear, it's very messy. But on today's episode, I want to talk about the culture wars, especially what is happening that's positive with the new class of social justice warriors, as well as what is happening that is not so positive with the social justice warriors and the growing number of people who want to fight for their rights. So that's on today's program. This is what downtown Salt Lake City looked like just about 1 year ago. This was on May 30th, and this was body cam footage from the Salt Lake City Police Department. I'm going to go into that a little more. But in today's episode, I mostly want to go into who are these social justice warriors, what are their objectives, and I want to parse out the difference between good social justice crusading, such as fighting against the inland port and the disproportionate amount of harm the inland port would do, especially for poorer people in Salt Lake City, because the port is located directly where they live, and it would do harm to them, not the state legislature members who were voting for it. And it's awesome that we are fighting for our right to literally breathe the air and have clean air and clean water. Way to go, people. And also, I applaud the efforts of Black Lives Matter. Our local Black Lives Matter chapter, led by Lex Scott, has done an amazing job at petitioning for meaningful police reform. Lex wants to have an evaluation process that changes internal affairs, that puts it in the hands of a citizen committee. Here's what she had to say about the violent protests in Salt Lake City last year.
When you're in Utah and you just see these fires and you want to be a bandwagon person, and you're like, you know what? Let's set this police car on fire. It hurts our movement, Black Lives Matter. It's ridiculous that it happened. We understand that the riot is the language of the unheard. You can replace a building or a police car. You can never replace Freddie Gray, Mike Brown, Patrick Harmon, Bobby Duckworth, George Floyd, Breonna Taylor. I like to say, if you watch a building burn and it upsets you more than watching George Floyd die, you're the problem.
But of course, there is more to say about the social justice warrior movement that is not positive. Mayhem and destruction in the streets by vandals, by arsons, by looters does not create meaningful police reform or change. It only creates more mayhem, more destruction, more damage, and this is not representative of the values we want to have here. So if you remember back, this was a time when we were watching the cities of Minneapolis burn, and then followed by Baltimore, followed by Washington, D.C., New York, and we in Salt Lake City didn't want to miss out on the mayhem and destruction. The result of this looting and violence was a lot of people seeing jail time and huge fines, and Salt Lake City taxpayers footing the cleanup bill. But I want to take you to yet another example of bad social justice crusading. And we're going to go back to 3 years ago on the campus of the University of Utah. To keep hate speech off our campus is why this group appeared. Let's listen to them.
Ben Shapiro, go to hell! It is right to rebel! Ben Shapiro, go to hell! It is right to rebel! Ben Shapiro, go to hell! It is right to rebel! Ben Shapiro, go to hell!
They're saying it is right to rebel. Ben Shapiro, go to hell, on the basis that Ben Shapiro spews hate. Then I asked for specifics. I interviewed about a dozen people to find out. Only a couple could tell me anything specific he had said or done. Most of it was related to institutional racism. I did a lot of research on Ben Shapiro and institutional racism. I made a whole nother video on that topic you can view by clicking up here. but it was difficult to find any specifics.
First of all, Ben Shapiro denies the existence of racism as an institution, and he just views it as like something that one person is racist. No, like the system is racist, and if we do not acknowledge that, then nothing's gonna ever change and nothing's gonna ever get fixed.
How about you guys? What brought you out tonight?
Brought me out because I think that Ben Shapiro is transphobic and racist rhetoric is harmful to our campus.
What does he say that's racist?
Well, exactly what Brim was just telling you about, that racism is not an institution, it is just, you know, like it, sorry.
It is an institution?
Sorry.
That's all right. What brought you out tonight?
Oh, I can't talk. I think if I do, I'm not eloquent enough to say anything. I'm just going to make a fool.
This protest was organized by a group called SDS, Students for a Democratic Society. In the 60s, they were all about holding the government accountable for Vietnam, for getting us out of Vietnam, and for free speech, making peace with the authorities, and funding education. Today, it seems they have a different set of objectives, which are to shut down speakers with whom they disagree. But besides BLM, SDS, Antifa ended up showing up, and they brought knives and clubs. Antifa was actually infiltrated by a podcaster, Steven Crowder, who found out they were intending violence. This all, of course, demonstrated just how extremely divided our country is.
Like, I guess both sides paints the other side as people who are like intolerable to their opinions and won't like interact with them at all.
Don't agree with me, I'm not going to listen to you, I'm not going to talk to you, I'm just going to yell and fight.
I appreciated that a lot of the students could articulate their opinions. And surprisingly, a lot of them did not agree that the best idea was to shut a speaker down who they disagreed with.
Free speech, but what are you doing? You're telling people don't protest. That's against free speech. You're whining about it.
Quite a few agreed that this very organized effort to try to shut down a speaker seemed to run contrary to American values. But my other question was, where is this all coming from? Why are we learning now a different version of history? And why is it that more people are not subscribing to the traditional view of history that America is a great country? And what I learned is that postmodern thinking and postmodernism is the idea is that we should question everything. We should create new and alternative versions of history. And the new and alternative version of history that's spreading more and more on campuses and throughout the West is that America is not a good place. America is a racist country. America's founding fathers were racists. And that America is a bad place. And we need to atone for our sins, us white people, by recognizing our inherent racism. And critical race theory gets to the heart of it. Critical race theory is the notion that we as Americans are, by and large, if we are white, racists, and black people or dark-skinned people are primarily victims, and therefore white people need to practice anti-racism by feeling that they have been perpetrating and victimizing dark-skinned people for many, many years. This is essentially changing history, not based on facts, but based on feelings. It's not factually accurate history. So how does this relate back to the Salt Lake City protest? Protests and riots that we've never seen before like this in Salt Lake. Well, people can justify violence and protesting, rioting, when they think their country, especially law enforcement, police officers, are bad and not looking out for them. And they can justify mayhem this way. When you are literally being taught by professors in universities and in some high schools as well that you as a white person are a perpetrator of evil deeds and the only way to atone for your sins is to level the playing field by getting rid of the racist police, of course there's going to be massive mayhem. And what this will eventually lead to, as I'm glad it's settled down, but is this whole concept of the Great Reset, which I'll go into greater detail in another episode. So in looking back at Salt Lake City's worst riot ever, I think we can look at what really makes America great has not ever been about violence. It's been about freedom of expression. It's been about the ability for individuals to rise above and do amazing, incredible things. Whether it's invention, whether it's business, whether it's about being extremely original. There is no question the world has benefited from America. And if you don't believe me, go check out this Harvard professor who's concluded that the spread of freedom and democracy worldwide has lifted more people out of poverty than any other set of ideas ever. That's Dr. Steven Pinker. So, to all you social justice warriors out there, I applaud what you're doing to create meaningful social change, which articulates your ideas, which argues in favor of what you believe. But let's go back to what you're being taught. I know you're being taught to check your privilege, to learn how to be an anti-racist, to learn how to be more sensitive about the communities and the cultures that exist in this world, and to know that there have been horrible atrocities committed by white people in the past. But atrocities have happened worldwide all throughout history and have not been committed by America. America, in contrast, accurately has spread ideals of democracy and free markets. These two ideals have spread worldwide and continue to spread to lift millions of people out of poverty. What this all boils down to is the culture that we want to create here today. On the one hand, you have a culture of rights that protects us from government and tyranny by holding in the highest esteem individual freedom and liberty. On the other hand, you have an emerging culture which wants to feed us everything we can possibly need, using the government to take freedom from one group of people to give money to another group. This might sound great, because who doesn't like free stuff? But the problem with government programs is we get addicted to them, and then we get lazy. And then eventually we realize we've lost our freedom.
Government programs mean nothing more or less than robbing Peter to pay Paul. Now, there's no political capital to be made by robbing Peter to pay Paul if you get Peter's vote and lose Paul's vote. The real trick is to rob Peter to pay Paul on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and rob Paul to pay Peter on Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday.
I'm not going to tell you what to think, but please consider thinking for yourself. This program is brought to you in part by Green Bike, Canyon Meadows grass-fed beef, and the Green Pig Pub. If you like the new format of the podcast, consider visiting utahstories.com. There you'll find awesome food reviews of local restaurants by Ted Scheffler. You'll find all sorts of awesome local journalism and stories. And if you subscribe to our digital newsletter, we will send you one single email a week. We will never spam you, and we will automatically unsubscribe you if you don't open the newsletter. It's a great way to support the program and to support our ongoing efforts to provide authentic local journalism. Another way you can support the program is by subscribing to our print magazine. You just click on the subscribe button here and we will send you a print subscription every month for the next year for $24. It's an incredible deal for what you get from it. Another way you can be a part of our program is to follow us on Instagram. It's probably our most effective social media platform, where we post about things that are going on in your local community, especially Sugar House, downtown Salt Lake City, and Moab. Thank you so much for watching. This has been Richard Markosian. I will see you next time.